All right, I definitely needed my notepad today because I think I've just filled a page up. I'm going to have to watch this back.
Yeah.
My dream is to improve the residential building industry for all involved. Throughout this podcast, we're going to be chatting to all types of industry experts to make sure that builders, tradies and clients all have a fantastic experience. G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Level Up. We're back here in the shed today. Today we've got Peta from Brisbane Town Planning. So I'm really excited about this one because this is something that I think gets very overlooked in our industry by clients, builders, a lot of people buying property. So I'm pretty excited about the information we're going to get out of you today. You're a pretty bubbly character, so I love your energy.
I like that. I'll take that. It's a massive compliment.
We're going to get cranking on this and smash some information out. So, look, town planning and DAs is definitely something that I, to be honest, didn't really understand until probably the last 4 or 5 years.
No one ever understands anything about the town planning process until you go through it, and you get a very, very steep learning curve.
Yeah, and like it's something that in the past I would. Like people would be asking me to price work, or I'd get involved with the design process, and they would say, "Oh, we're still waiting on a DA or waiting on this," and I'd just go like, "Well, when it's ready, it's ready." Like
I'll see you at the end.
Yeah, or like come back to me when you got whatever you need to get.
Exactly. Yep.
And it probably wasn't until I started doing a couple of projects for ourselves, and then like obviously you're aware we do that pack process where we get paid as a consultant, and that's really. It taught me more. Like I do understand a little bit about what you guys do now, but I think the importance for probably a lot of our listeners out there and builders and probably people that are doing their own developments is a simple phone call or even engaging you for a small fee, I guess, to do an assessment could actually save them a lot of money and
emotion and tears and
and possibly change that. Like especially if they're buying a property, like it could make or break the decision.
Definitely.
So how did you get into town planning?
I have a love-hate relationship with this question because I wish I was one of these people that just said, from day dot, from a young kid, I used to love building blocks or I loved Lego. I was really passionate about the industry. I was destined to go down this path. But the cold, hard truth is it was a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo the day before the uni preferences were due. And I fully intended to go back and change my uni preferences and take it seriously and just didn't get around to it. And so next thing I know, I got off at town planning. I went, okay, why not? Let's give this a shot. Yeah. 4 years later, graduated, and I went, oh, well, I got the degree. May as well put it to some use. Went and got employed by Brisbane City Council, worked for them for a while. And next thing I knew, I was on this journey. And I'm so, so grateful, though, that I actually did end up on this journey because it's the best path I could have possibly ended up on for me personally. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Like I love those stories when something really cool comes out of something that was a bit last minute and
definitely
pull a piece of paper out of that.
But I mean, like you were alluding to before, no one knows what town planning is. So how was I ever going to end up on this path as a kid? Yeah. It's a random series of events that got me here and I'm grateful for it.
So, like, I would assume that working for the council, like, you would have learned a lot because...
Like every town plan is different, but for me, I'm so grateful that I started there because it gave me a really good understanding of how things happen on the other side of the fence and more importantly, the pressures they're under. So if you understand what's driving certain decisions, why they're making those calls, it then makes it a lot easier for you to address the issue because they might be sitting here saying, hey, we want you to do this. And you go, yeah, but I understand that you're really concerned about that over there. So I'm going to go and target that to get what I want. So definitely helps in that regard, just understanding the why behind things.
Yeah, that's
and obviously gives you contacts and all of that sort of stuff, which is a benefit too.
Yeah, so you in your own business now, you would be liaising with council a lot
every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you would like having that experience from council, like have some connections and.
Yep, I remember for quite a few years afterwards, I used to ring up some of the assessment managers and they go, oh, I touched one of your old jobs the other day. I saw your name on something. And so it was a bit of a joking sort of thing going on there.
So what made you take the leap to... So one thing I think, and it doesn't really matter what part of the industry you're in, but I really like to find out why people took a step to go into their own business because I think there's a lot of people out there that are sitting on the fence, humming and hawing, should I, shouldn't I, what am I going to do? And when people actually take that step and like you can see how passionate you are about it, you've just got to take that leap sometimes.
Okay, so where do we start? There's a lot I can tell you, but I'll give you the sort of medium version here.
Yeah.
Basically, I had a bit of a reality moment in life where I went, bugger, I don't know who I am. What you're laughing, going, where's the story going to go? You're scared.
That's everybody. That's everybody.
So yeah, I was basically early 20s, so pretty young. Went, okay, I don't know what I want out of life, what I'm trying to chase here. It was a bit of a reality moment, scary moment. So I went, okay, I'm going to go out there and challenge myself, push every boundary I can possibly push to try and work out what I do and don't like in life.
Yeah.
So I chased every physical goal you could possibly find. I abseiled off skyscrapers. I did the Kokoda track in PNG. I parasailed in the Himalayas. I did everything and anything you can possibly think of that was physical. And I got to the end of the year and I was like, okay, I've tried everything I can think of except climbing into a volcano, because my mum kept saying, please don't do that to me. So I'd done everything possible and I still didn't feel satisfied. There was something missing in my life. And so I obviously put some more thought into it and just went, I haven't pushed myself mentally. I've done the physical stuff, but I don't know what I'm capable of mentally.
Yeah.
So then I went, well, what better way to challenge myself mentally than jumping in the deep end and starting a business with no savings and all of that sort of stuff behind me.
That's a great story.
Yeah, basically just went, let's give it a shot. What's the worst that happens?
Yeah.
Learn some life lessons and start over.
That is awesome. So, obviously, I love, so for anyone watching that, make sure you go and check out Peta at Brisbane Town Planning, because she does fantastic videos on social media, and so, I love that you give so much value. You give people so many tips and hints for what they can be doing. And
probably should warn people, though, they do get a little bit weird and wonderful, some of the videos. I do put on fat suits and wigs and do some crazy stuff to try and really get the message across. So I will warn you.
Well, look, I think... so one obviously, we ran into each other at a business blueprint seminar. I was there with Amelia, but I love your passion. I love how bubbly you are about it. And for me, and even just hearing your stories now, for me, when you hear town planning,
you think boring as bat
straight over the top. What's going on here?
Exactly.
I love the fact that you're bringing fun to it. It's fantastic. So, and I guess for anyone out there that sees you and watches your stuff or stumbles across your stuff, to me that would instantly make me want to contact you, because you're making it exciting.
I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I respect that. There'll be people out there that do want the serious professional, and that's totally cool. But then there's also people that want someone who's a little bit different. It's going to be a bit more relatable, a bit more funny, or whatever you want to call it. And okay, maybe I'm that person for them. Yeah.
So, Brisbane, obviously we're not as old. We're not as old as Sydney and Melbourne and stuff, but there's a lot of houses around that I guess people would assume and probably purchase without doing their homework. That Brisbane actually has a lot of rules that affects what they can and can't do. Obviously affects their project, their sale price if they're doing it for I guess a sale type project or a speccey or something like that. So how and I'm struggling with this because I don't really know what's involved in town planning. So can you give us a bit of a run through about, I guess, why people should be talking to town planners?
Because we can crush your hopes and dreams. That's the short answer. The nicest possible way. I feel like going, whoa. No, how do I even start with this topic? So town planning can literally change the direction you run in with every single property. So I'll give you a few examples. For example, pre-47 houses. They're protected if they're in the traditional building character overlay. If they're pre-1911 construction, the entire external fabric is protected. That's going to definitely influence the way you extend your house backwards. You can't suddenly take that rear roof form off to be able to go backwards. If you've got flooding, you can potentially have to be 2.5 metres off the ground, if not higher. And everyone goes, well, I want a garage. We can't get from the ground level up to 2.5 for a garage. It's just not going to work. You can have protected vegetation. That'll stop you building in your backyard. You can have so many different things that'll come up on a property. Easements, what's another thing I saw the other day? Street trees. If you want driveways coming into your property and you got a street tree, you've got issues. There's just so many different things that can come up on a property that can take you from, you can do whatever you like, right through, you're not touching this site. There is no work occurring on this property. And a massive part of my role, like we were talking earlier, is a counsellor, is dealing with people who they've gone all the way through the design process. They've been emotionally engaged for the last year, 2 years in designing, creating their dream house. They've got the plans, they've gone all the way to the certifier, and the certifier goes, cool, where's your town planning approval? And they go, well, what's town planning?
See, that amazes.
Okay, back you come.
Yeah, that really amazes me, because the designers and architects we're working with are asking those questions almost before they put pen to paper. So the fact that design work's getting done,
ones.
yeah, that really amazes me.
I think the biggest thing to take note of here is within the design industry, you've got the people that are very collaborative and they want to take on that management, or not project management, but they basically want to oversee the process and help you and guide you, because they genuinely want to make sure their jobs get off the ground. They want to see people live in these houses.
Yeah.
But then you've also got the other type of business owners who are happy just to go, I'm just drawing what you tell me to draw. It's not my role to be a project manager. It's not my role to coordinate all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And whilst I want to respect that and understand where they're coming from, they have their specialty, I see the tears every single day, like I just said. Like we were talking earlier, and I mentioned that I once heard a stat from council themselves that said only 1 in 3 approvals ever sees the light of day. And a massive reason for that is because people aren't working together and these jobs are just falling over at the hurdles.
Oh, look, as you know, I'm all about collaboration. That's the whole thing behind our pack process, and being involved in that pack process. So, it's definitely, even just being involved and seeing how designs take shape has made me such a better builder. But then also, now, I'd probably say it's 1 in every 4 jobs we do probably needs town planning. And now I'm sort of starting to get a little bit of an insight into how that works. And we've had a few jobs, like you've said, where it can be really, really hard to tell if it's pre-1911 or 1947, and sometimes it's a matter of the size of the eaves or the size of the weatherboards. I love, you've got a lot of content on your socials about that.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a history nerd when it comes to dating houses. I love it. It's like a game for me, going, okay, what detective stuff can I pull out of this house? Oh, I can see a low-hanging door handle. I can see a tiny eave, wide profile boards. Oh, it's ticking the boxes. Run us through a few more of them. I didn't know about the low handles. Yeah, so when you go into houses, if they've got sort of chest-height door handles, that was very fashionable in the 1920s and 30s. Whereas if you get the low-handle door sort of handle, I'm saying handle so many times, but the low door handles, that's what I'm trying to say, that's more typically like pre-1911. You've got to be wary, though, because people can repurpose doors. So obviously you do a renovation, take a door from a different house. Yeah. So you can't rely on just one feature to sort of date a house. You've got to look at a whole heap of different things. But you've got gables out the front. So I've never, to this date, seen a house which has more than 2 gables, which is pre-1911. So if you see a tri-gabled house, it's most likely 1920s or 30s. When it comes to the detailing on the houses, if it's just a plain sort of gable detail with timber right to the top, or if you've got what's called a flying gable, so it's basically the details sitting forward of the timber, they're most typically pre-1911 features, whereas if the detailing's actually built into the gable itself, that's 1920s, 30s onwards. Sash windows, so if you've got sash windows, you're going to be pre-1911. Steep roof forms, pre-1911. Wide boards in the walls, pre-1911.
So how have you learned all this?
I used to have a friend, unfortunately she's passed away, but used to have a friend that was very, very much into Queenslanders, and she started my journey. She taught me a lot. She was an architect. And she taught me a massive amount of stuff. And it just, like I said, it's a game for me now. It's like, okay, how do I break you down? And there's a couple of places where I'll walk away and I'll say to clients, look, I can't work it out now, but give me another week of sort of digging, or at least a couple of days of digging through the history stuff, and I'll crack it.
So how do you work? Do you charge a fee to come out and assess this type of stuff, or
It depends. So when it comes to building designers who are our key clients, we want to build those long-term relationships with them. So I want to encourage them to ask questions up front. I want to ask them to encourage them to ask questions up front. So for them, I'm saying we won't charge for you to reach out, run the site through Charlie, which, as you alluded to before, is our automated site assessment program, to get that initial information up front. And if it helps them in terms of explaining things to the client, or if it's a slightly complex site, happy to come out at free of charge. Because I want to, like I said, encourage people to ask more questions up front. Yeah,
awesome. That is so cool. And I guess, do you only work in South East Queensland, Brisbane?
We only do Brisbane.
Yeah.
Live and breathe Brisbane. So I'm a big believer that it's one thing to be able to read the rules on the page. Anyone can do that. But it's another thing to know how council interprets those rules that are on the page. And that interpretation can change week from week. So we focus very specifically on renovations and extensions to houses within that Brisbane area. So small lots, character houses, that sort of stuff. We'll do a little bit of subdivision, some other stuff. Every now and then a client will push me to go a little bit higher. Look, we're doing a 50 lot subdivision in Moreton Bay at the moment. Not what I normally do, but it's a client I've worked with for 5 or so years now. So we're like, okay, for you, I'll do it. But yet by basically doing that stuff over and over again, you know what council's going to say. And I get that question all the time. They're like, oh, do we need to talk to council? Do we need to get that pre-lodgement feedback? And I'm like, well, we do hundreds of these each year. I know what they're going to say. It sounds really cocky saying it that way, but yeah, you've got the experience behind you.
Well, I think like sometimes, like I've definitely learned it does pay to be a bit blunt sometimes, because otherwise you just keep beating around the bush. The client doesn't really understand what you're trying to say. Like sometimes you've just got to tell them how it is and they can make a decision, yes or no.
That's something I've really struggled with in business over the years, because I used to be very, very blunt. And I used to be like, no, not going to be approved. Don't bother talking any further. Like, don't waste your time and energy.
Yeah.
But you realise a lot of people, because it is town planning's new news to them, they're not ready to accept that. And if you're too harsh and too upfront, they'll go shopping around and find other people, and they'll find a yes-man town planner that'll lodge the application for them and take their money.
Yeah.
So I've learned over the years I've got to be a little bit softer in my approach, and I've got to sort of step them through it a little bit more, which drives me insane, because we were talking before, I'm all about the efficiencies. But just to make sure that they understand the why and they're emotionally ready to embrace that feedback. I've learned to be a little bit softer.
So like I guess from a builder's point of view, if a builder is getting sent the plans to price and stuff, and they is there something that they should be looking for to know if it's had a DA or needs a DA, or like how do you?
So like the building designers, we also work with a lot of builders, and my mantra is exactly the same. If you get an inquiry, send it through to us and let us just run it through, Charlie, have a look at it and come back to you and just say, okay, these are the key things you need to be aware of. Most of the time we can give you options. So we can sit here and go, okay, usually it's 3 options. Option 1 is if you stick within these rules, bypass town planning, happy days. Cheapest option, quickest option, gives you control over the outcome. Everyone loves it. Problem is you don't necessarily have free reign to do what you want in terms of design. Second option is, okay, you step outside of the bounds of those exemptions, but you still generally comply with what council wants to see. So in a character area, you use lightweight materials, pitched roof forms, verandas, all of that sort of stuff. You're generally lining up with what council wants to see. If you go down that path, you're going to qualify for the faster sort of process, which means you're going to get the approval typically within a couple of months, let's just say, for a standard house extension or something like that. Again, I'm talking Brisbane here. Or the third option is you go all out. You go for what you want, knowing that you're going to have to negotiate back with council. That obviously is a more costly option, time-consuming option, but it potentially gives you what you want design-wise. So you've got to decide what's your highest priority. Is it time, is it money, or is it the design? If you go, it's time and money, okay, well, let's try and stick to the exemptions. If you go, it's design, I'm passionate about this design, I want this outcome, let's try it.
Push the boundaries. So how long typically does that process, like if they choose to go all out and push the boundaries, get what they want, how long would that process typically take?
I wouldn't take on a job that I thought was going to take more than 5 or 6 months, an absolute max. It'd have to, 6 months is pushing my limits massively. 4 or 5 months is probably the point. If it was going to take longer than that, I'd just say you're wasting your time. Like you're pushing for something you can't get approval for. But
it sounds to me like you are so thorough in what you do, and I'm still stuck on you do the homework on the old houses, and you know what you should be looking for in doors and gables, and
I'm learning bit by bit, and it's good because we're getting access to more and more resources. Like last year, we finally got access to some postal records from 1908, 1909, 1912, or something like that. So that allows us to go back now and fact check a lot of, like I'm always saying to people, this house give me pre-1911 vibes because I can see the sash windows or I can see whatever's going on here.
So
let's fact check it.
How do postal records help?
So basically, back in the day, people used to waddle around the street. I don't know how it actually happened, but they used to go around the streets and you'd record whoever was in the street, but you had to pay to be recorded. So if you were away on holidays, you weren't actually home at the time, you'd be missed, or if you were too poor to pay that year, you'd be missed, but otherwise you'd put your name down. And so each year you can basically go through and they say, okay, in this street between marker this and marker that, which is usually street markers, between this marker and this marker on the left-hand side of the street, we've got these names of these people. So sometimes then you go to the detail plans, which I can explain if you want more detail.
No, just brief. Just give us a brief.
So basically detail plans were created for the purpose of laying the sewage lines around Brisbane, but they outline verandas, stairs, all that basic infrastructure on a house, and they sometimes put the name of the house on. So you can match the name of the house on the detail plan to the name on the postal records, or you might go through and say, okay, well, the detail plan, which might be dated 1930 or 1920, has 4 houses on that side of the street, and when I look at the postal records, bingo, 4 houses. Okay, so they're the original 4. So it's kind of like a bit of a puzzle game, putting it all together. And you got like contour maps and a few other resources that you can tap into. And it's just, as I keep saying, puzzle game, detective game, put it all together.
Your passion's amazing. Like,
I love it.
I think it's fantastic. Look, I'm definitely a sucker for an old house. Like when we do a fair bit of travelling and stuff, and like we go in the old towns, and I love walking around and sussing them out and getting a feel for it. Like you can't beat an old home.
So why do you think that is? Because this is a question I've posed to a couple of architects recently, because I love Queenslanders. They're the character they exude, they're beautiful, but I can't explain why I love them. And one architect said to me, it's because they're so raw that you can't hide anything in a Queenslander because the walls are so thin and everything, and they're just innocent. And they gave me some technical terms and all this sort of stuff, but I'm like, I still haven't quite gotten to the bottom of it.
Yeah, look, for me, my great-grandfather was a builder. Yep. So for me, I like the tools and stuff that we have these days to do what we do, and then you look back at those older homes and you see that what they had to do with their bare hands and hammers and chisels and saws, hand drills to do tie downs and stuff. Like it just amazes me. Like housing out all their studs and all their mortise and tenon joints and all that for a house. Like it blows my mind. And then you go a step further than that. Like I love old sawmills. Like we do a lot of full driving, exploring out in the bush and stuff. And we've stumbled across a few old. We actually found it's called Elgin wood, I think it is. It's all fenced off at the moment, though, for safety and that. But it's in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, there's no forest left around because they cut it all back in the day, and now it's just all cow paddocks. But it's an old steam-driven sawmill, and it's like they've just. I did a little bit of exploring there. I may or may not have jumped the fence, but
minor details.
there's like a blackboard on the wall, and it's literally like there's timber on the rails, like in the big bandsaw. It's literally like they've just walked out one afternoon, knocked off, and haven't come back. And
yeah.
I love timber, like, but I love I don't know, like just the way that it had to be done.
Like the ingenuity or something like that.
Yeah, like with your hands, with steam power, like it blows my mind. And like the fact that you can drive past, like I hate that there's old buildings that get knocked down. Like I've joined a page at the moment, like that Sutton Beach Pavilion at Redcliffe. Like I can't believe they're going to knock that down. But when I see them getting knocked down, like the fact that a lot of them just go to landfill drives me nuts. Like on a lot of our older homes, we do go there. Like you'll see around my shed, like we store a lot of old stuff. Like I can't stand the fact that old timber gets thrown in a hole in the ground. Like you can't buy that anymore. You can't get it. It's seasons, it's age. But yeah, I think for me, it's just thinking back and like how hard they had to work to build homes that are still beautiful today and still standing there, like 100, 150.
Yeah,
like it. And I'm just really passionate about saving them. It really grabs me when we get a client that's got an old house or thinking of buying an old house, and we can get involved with it. And we've done a few in around New Farm and stuff where they have been very tricky. Like we've been able to like save the front facade, and we actually had a situation on one in New Farm where the front and the left-hand side wall had to stay, and the floor. And like we were digging out underneath the house. This is probably going back 10, 11 years, maybe even more. But we did everything we could, like properly. And one Wednesday afternoon, we got this huge storm come through and blew the wall down. And straight away, like everyone in New Farm thought we'd purposely done it because we want. And it was a huge shit fight. It went on for months. Ended up costing us, I think it ended up costing about $38,000 in legal fees. And
character building lesson, hey?
Yeah.
You learn a lot from those experiences. Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Brisbane's got some beautiful homes. I think they should be restored. They should be kept. I'm not a big fan of when people get these old homes and just turn them into something that they're not meant to be. But like your town planning, like I guess people could probably do a better job with some of these houses if they came to people like you. Am I right?
So what regard are you thinking like?
Like do people tend to go down the wrong path or like you said, like there's some designers out there that design things without doing their homework.
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. So I think there's a lot of thinking on the fly, patching stuff up, Bandaid solutions that occur because people are emotionally and financially committed to seeing the project through. Yeah. Whereas if they'd asked the questions up front and got the information up front, it could have been a more holistic and smoother process. Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement.
So what, like, just to give people listening a ballpark, they don't have to tell us exact fees, but like, what's a ballpark typical fee like?
$50,000. No, I wish.
Anyway, and I'm saying ballpark, and everyone that watches this knows that I definitely don't give ballparks. But
no.
Like, to get you involved, to be able to make an educated decision, and in the long term get a better outcome. Like, what are you typically talking about?
So we basically don't charge for that initial advice and investigations because, as I said before, we're trying to encourage people to ask these questions. If it requires detailed assessment, so if I'm going to sit there and I have to dig into the history on the site, talk to council, all of that sort of stuff, okay, we might charge a couple $100 for that, up to $500. If we're going to lodge an application, it depends on how complex the application is, how much negotiation we're going to do. Like I said before, if you go option 2, which is a really straightforward sort of application, $2,000 to $3,000. Yep. If you start going down the other end where you're like, we're going to spend 5 months pushing this, okay, it might be $3,000 to $4,000. If you start doing something bigger, it might be more expensive.
Yep.
Council's fees are typically the same, so they range from about $1,500 up to about $2,500 for a house type thing, depending on whether you have to include partial demolition and all of that sort of stuff.
So even if you went the whole hog for, like, typically, and like, so we're pretty much talking inner city, aren't we? Anyway, like with a lot of
that's usually where we triggered stuff.
So for someone that's looking at renovating or doing something or buying a property, like, realistically in this day and age, like we're talking 800 plus thousand million plus. For them to, like, realistically, for worst case scenario, they might spend $8-10 and have all their questions answered and be able to get a far better project and a better outcome.
And this is, again, another evolution I've had in my own business. When I first started all those years ago, I think it's almost 7 years ago now or whatever, long time. But when I first started the business, I was very big on, if you don't need to go down the DA path, let's not go DA path. Like, let's go option 1 at every cost. We'll just cut this out here. We'll take that back there. But what I've learned over time is, and as you suggested, prices have obviously gone up now as a result of all the other stuff that's COVID's happened. But you look at it in the scheme of things and you go, well, hold on a sec. That's $5,000 total spend on a budget of $1 million to suddenly get you that whole extra room or that whole outdoor area you've liked. In the scheme of things, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I personally have changed my position. I now definitely still give everyone the option of avoiding a DA. So I'll go, this is what you need to do if you want to avoid us altogether.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that you consider going this path as well. Think the big picture, 10 years down the track or 5 years down the track when you're sitting in that room. Is it going to bug you that you didn't get that outdoor area or whatever the situation may be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely been an evolution for me personally.
Probably going to be people listening to this that are sitting there, going to be sitting there listening to this thinking, holy shit, like, I should have spent that $5,000 because I'm looking over there every day.
Guys.
And I didn't get my extra room or my outdoor area. But
and I've also learnt with some people, they don't want to hold on to that what if factor. So there's a lot of people that'll be haunted, say 2 years down the track going, what if I'd applied to council for that?
Yeah.
What if I'd tried for that? Would I have got the extra views? So for some people, the money's worth spending for that alone.
Yeah. So like a lot of builders listen and watch the stuff I do. So we, and again, like I look back at some of the jobs I did maybe 10 to 15 years ago, and there was stuff that I did that I definitely shouldn't have been doing, but it was on.
We've all been there.
But it was on the drawing, so I did it. But knowing what I know now, like, there's some pretty big consequences. Well, obviously we had that one expensive one, but for builders out there that are watching this, like, it can be as simple as, like we've had one at Tarragindi where when all the paperwork come back, like, we weren't allowed, like, all we were allowed to do was paint. Like, we couldn't change any windows, we couldn't even replace weatherboards. The only weatherboards that we could replace was where someone had cut one of those shitty wall hung air conditioning units in. But again, because, like, one of the designers in particular, we work with Aaron, like, he has a very close collaboration. Like, he had it all clearly noted on the drawings. But I would imagine that there is lots of builders out there that are ripping cladding off, ripping window hoods off.
Yep. If I had $1 for every time a builder said to me, but that's how it's always been done. That's the most practical way of doing it. You can't possibly do it that way. It costs 20 times as much. I know. It's not until the person gets burnt on a job that they suddenly realise, oh, these rules exist and, oh, the consequences are not fun.
So there is a risk there, isn't there, that a like, I don't know, a shitty neighbour rings up because there's a development getting done and dobs you in, or like, is is there a such thing as it? Like, would a council drive around and check on this type of stuff?
We've seen a drastic shift in the industry in the last 2 years, thanks to COVID. Thanks again, COVID. COVID's changed everything. But it used to be a case of I'd sit there and say to people, look, let's be honest. You're probably not going to have anyone ever find out. Like, the only way it ever comes up is if a neighbour complains or if someone tries to do the same thing and they get shut down by council. So someone goes, oh, but I want to do a carport like such and such did this down the street. And council goes, how did they do it? Hold on a sec, they shouldn't have done it. You get in trouble that way. So we never used to see complaints. It just never happened. But now with COVID, everyone, number one, is at home, analysing their environments a lot more. They're looking at their neighbours a lot more. And we've all had this massive steep learning curve in terms of technology. Everyone had to learn how to use Zoom overnight. So as a result, now everyone's also going, okay, well, let's learn how to look up these programs and work out what's happening in my area. So everyone now seems to have alerts on the neighbours' properties and everyone on the street. And the minute an application's lodged, they're instantly reviewing it and they're instantly worried about, okay, how's that going to impact the sunshine in my office or this or that? And so we are getting so much more input from the community than we've ever seen. And so I keep joking to people, like I used to always, whenever we did a submission response, I always just used to bluntly write back, not a town planning matter, not relevant, the end type thing. Like the job was so easy. But now I know everyone is reviewing that information. I have to be so sensitive in the way I handle it. And I have to write back and basically educate the submitter as to why it can't happen that way.
So do you know any legalities? Like, does it come back to the builder? Like, does it come back to the person that's actually ripped them off, or does it come back that it wasn't noted on the drawings? Like, how does it work?
Depends what was shown on the drawings.
Yeah.
So most of the time it won't be shown on the drawings. The builder just knows that's standard practice. That's how we've always done it. To get that end outcome, we've got to rip that cladding off.
Yeah.
And the designer turns around, or architect turns around and goes, but we didn't tell you to rip the cladding off. That notation wasn't on the plans.
Yeah. Because one of the ones we had, like, and it was hard for me not to do it, but like some of the weatherboards were like a little bit rotten and past their use by date, but we could not touch them, so we basically had to restore them. So and look, I guess it comes back, like, again, I've learnt all this because of our collaboration and the people that we get involved. But yeah, I imagine there is a lot of builders out there that, again, just are completely looking over all this and probably have no understanding or idea that it even exists. And it's only a matter of time before, you get that one neighbour that's sitting at home now, because everyone's working at home, and looks out their window every day and hears all the building noise and is getting the shits with it and rings up, and before you know it, you're going to cop a big fine. Yeah,
and it's something that used to really, really frustrate me, because I'm like, come on, guys, I'm trying to educate you here. I'm trying to give you this information. Why can't you see all the traffic hurdles on the horizon type thing?
Yeah.
But then I've sort of learnt or matured a bit over time and gone, everyone has so much on their plates. I can understand builders, you're juggling so many different trades, so many different things, emotions with the client, all of that stuff at once. I now can't take that high and mighty approach of being like, why? And I now go, I understand, how do I make this work? How do I try and work around that? And so that's probably the biggest struggle I'm facing at the moment in terms of like social media and that sort of stuff. How do I get that cut through? How do I make people stop and listen?
Yeah. All right. So Peter, give us I'd love to hear a bit of an example of a sob story. Like, tell us a story where someone's come to you and you've maybe shattered their dreams and then they've come running back.
So many. Where do I start? It makes me sound so evil, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so the one probably that jumps to mind fresh is a inquiry that came to me a couple of years ago. It was basically East Brisbane, pre-1911 house. I looked at it and you could tell instantly it was pre-1911. Super steep roof form, sash windows, all of that sort of stuff. So I basically turned around to the client and said, look, unfortunately, pre-1911 house, you are not going to be able to get that removed. She turned to me and said,
but they wanted to knock it down, did they?
They wanted to talk. So that's where she basically said to me, look, we wanted to knock it down. That's the entire reason why we bought this property. We're going to bulldoze it, start again, and build a brand new house.
Yeah.
And I went, it's not going to happen, guys. Like, sorry. They obviously didn't like the response I gave them. Totally understand. When you purchase a property with that dream, you're not necessarily going to listen to this crazy town planner, are you? So they
not one that dresses up in fat suits.
Exactly. You should see, I've actually got one video where I've got the makeup strewn across my face because I've lost my mind. I do go some weird places. But anyway, basically, they went around and they found a town planner that I call a yes man town planner. So someone who was like, yeah, sure, we'll lodge that application for you. lodged the application. Sure enough, council said no. Computer says no, as the saying goes. So they got rejected. They went and then found a yes man lawyer. The yes man lawyer then lodged the appeal for them. And about 50 grand later and a year later, they finally realised they weren't going to get it approved through the courts, and they came back around to me to talk about a renovation. So, yeah, that's probably one of the ones that sticks in my mind the most.
So
not,
is that,
you don't want to go, I told you so, but it was one of those I told you so moments.
So is that, like you touched on it before, is that one of those ones where you would handle differently now? Like,
yes, yeah. If they came to me again, I would be a bit more sympathetic and step them through the process a bit more. So instead of just saying, computer says no, it's not going to happen, I would have explained to them a little bit more as to why. Yeah. Maybe given some examples to sort of evidence and fact check myself so they didn't think I was this crazy town planner that had no idea what she was saying.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I've come to learn that people aren't emotionally ready to embrace town planning if they've never heard about it. So yeah, if I could go back, I'd definitely do that differently.
Yeah, no, look, that's just incredibly valuable information. That's cost those people
50 grand in legal fees and all that stuff.
Yeah. The lawyers' fees,
council fees,
12 months of whatever rent, holding costs, and plus.
And they're emotionally designing that new house. They're going to bulldoze that house and build a brand new one. Yeah. And suddenly I'm like, you got to work around this existing structure.
Yeah, like, that's a big thing. And like to me, that is something that could make you even so they come back to you, they talk about a renovation, they go ahead, they build that, but you've now always got that experience in the back of your mind that this house isn't what we intended to have.
And let's be honest, renovations always cost money, especially when they're Queenslanders. You uncover so many surprises along the way.
Yeah,
they're always going to cost a lot more money than building brand new.
Yeah.
So they've bought that property and spent that money expecting to spend only a new build's price.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's powerful stuff. Look, go and see a town planner.
Yeah, moral of the story.
At the end of the day, like everything that you and I are doing, it's all about creating a better experience for the homeowner. Like making sure they get the best outcome, making sure they can do the most they can with the property they have or the home they purchased and all those types of things. But I imagine there's like a lot of mum and dad type investors out there, or even builders that may do their own projects every now and then that like again, I've learnt. So a lot of the time, like I know Aaron has rung yourself about a couple of the questions that have come up on a couple of our jobs, but and Amelia, like I run things by Amelia, so I haven't come to you directly. But like you touched on before, like it can be something as simple as a flood overlay. And so we had one client that was looking at purchasing this, and like they got me out there before I introduced them to designers, and I had no idea. Like they got me out there to do this, like tell them if it could be lifted or raised or whatever, and it wasn't until they got Aaron involved that he's like, oh, hang on, we better check on this. Like there's a big catchment area over there, like something might be going on. And yeah, like a third of the backyard where they thought they were going to be able to do this big extension. So luckily that one there, they got me out, like they were friends of friends, so I didn't mind, but they got me out basically the day before they were going to go to contract on this house. So simply by talking to me saying to them, oh, look, you probably better talk to Aaron, giving Aaron a phone call. Aaron may have called you. They were able to pull out, like not go ahead with the contract because they were expecting to build their family home on this property. So like there's no way around that except for talking to people like yourself.
Yeah. And everyone just goes, but hold on a sec, the real estate agent should tell me this, or the conveyancer should check this when they're doing their searches. No, this town planning does not come up in any of those processes. It's not in the real estate agent's interest, as blunt as it is, it's not in their interest to disclose this information to you because you're obviously then not going to pay a premium price and you're going to run for the hills. So they're not going to tell you that there's flooding in the backyard or there's protected vegetation or any of that sort of stuff. And the conveyancer always has a massive checklist of searches you can do. 95% of the time town planning is not on there, but everyone just goes, what's the minimum I need to do? I don't want to spend more money than I need to. That's just the mindset we have when we're buying property. So they probably could build it into their processes, but no one would take it up anyway.
No, look, I think it's, again, now it's pretty much a standard call to a town planner whenever we're looking at doing something, or if we get a client that's in that early stages. But there's just so much to know, and it is hard as a builder because we're taught to build a house. We're not taught about all this other stuff. So I think it's really important. And the whole point of this podcast is to educate people and help builders have better businesses, help clients have better experiences, and also help any younger people out there sort of get their head around what is in what professions are available in this industry, how you get into them. I find it amazing that town planning is a very male dominated industry from the little bit I know about it. So
it used to be. Like the last 5 years, we've definitely seen a shift, and there's a lot more females coming through and getting out and starting their own businesses and all that sort of stuff. I remember when I started like 7 years ago, I can't recall another female business owner or another female town planner that had their own business at that point in time.
Yeah.
So, but as I said, changing, definitely changing.
Yeah, and I would imagine, just from I've seen the benefit from the ladies that we have working in our businesses, and obviously again being partners with Amelia, females just bring a whole other skill set. And for me as a builder, one of those skill sets has been communication.
Yeah.
Just the way, I used to get myself into a lot of, shitty situations because I was a bit hot-headed. I didn't know what wording to use, pretty much the same as what happens at home sometimes. But females just have different emotions. You have a different way of communicating with people, a different way of dealing with situations. I think that's a big one. So, that would obviously flow through to your clients. I imagine.
I'd say we have a different approach to doing things. Yeah. The industry, like you suggested, historically has been very dominated by males, very dominated by serious individuals. I like to call them lawyer-like town planners.
Yeah.
People who are just very much, let's read the rules, let's keep it very professional and all of that sort of stuff. I don't know whether it's a result of my gender, probably more so just my personality, that I do things totally differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I joked before, get the fat suits out, get all that stuff out. If I can make a point by getting costumes, I'll do it.
Yeah, but I know, in a building situation, the female actually makes most of the decisions. So to me, a female would feel a lot more comfortable speaking with someone like yourself rather than calling a grumpy old man. That's
definitely, yep.
So I think there's a big market there for you, but
a big opportunity.
Yeah. And I take my hat off you. I think it's fantastic that for a start, you jumped into business, and that you're a female in a very.
Well, it's interesting hearing you say those comments because it's forcing me to reflect as you're talking on the early days when I started. And I remember specifically being told, don't put your photo on your website, don't put your tag, your job description as being owner or director or anything like that, because if people see that there's a youngish female in charge, they'll run for the hills.
Yeah.
And now I think back to that, I'm like, man, you can't hide who I am now with all the website, the videos and all of that sort of stuff. Come such a long way now to think back about it. Yeah.
But it's fantastic. The fact that you put yourself out there and you've obviously been very successful, the business is going well. So I've read some of the stats on your website. So
uh-oh, stalker.
Well, I really love that you've got that paragraph on there that says that you take all the BS out of town planning, because a lot of people would think, and I'll admit, myself for a long time, I thought town planning and
there's a lot of jargon in the industry and a lot of that stuff that goes on. Yeah. So one of my big missions is trying to really simplify things.
Yeah.
Like you said, take the BS out of the whole process.
Yeah. So the fact, so you're educating, you're giving away so much value in what you do. And I think there'd be a lot of people around Brisbane that have got a far better outcome in their finished home because of what you've been able to offer and deliver them. So it's, And look, I think it's obviously all the stuff we do now on social media and all that sort of thing. It is a lot of the time about taking a step back, reflecting on where you've come from, and I never ever used to do that. But sometimes you need to do that to think, holy shit, I am making a difference. So, like you said before, you have a group of builders or some builders now that you do a lot of regular work for.
Yep.
I'm sure they're seeing the benefits. Can you tell us any sort of situations where you've been able to help them out or get them out of a tricky situation or give them advice that maybe change the direction they were going to take on a property?
I think what it comes down to is the earlier you ask questions, the more information you have, the more decisions you can make early on. So there's less fumbling around and scratching around at the end. Like I see with builders, they're brought in to kind of pick up the pieces at the end and deal with the emotion, all that mess. So I'd like to think that by encouraging people to ask questions and get involved earlier, we're stopping some of that stuff from happening down the track. Can't think of the right word now.
Well, to me, it should be on everyone's checklist. Like if anyone out there and builders, for any builder that is like thinks that they might have a house, because it's really a time period, isn't it? Mostly, like, is that what town planning?
So the bulk of our work is focused on what I call character houses. So predominantly pre-1947 houses, so a house built in or before 1946. That's one of the magic cutoffs, and then the other cutoff is the 1911.
So is there town planning on? If you went and bought a block of land in a new estate, is there town planning?
There's always going to be town planning on everything. So I always say to people, think of it or approach it from an expectation that you will always trigger town planning on a property unless you can find exemptions or ways to get around everything. Generally speaking, if you're out in the suburbs, let's say you're in Stafford, Chermside, one of those sort of locations, you're going to be on a block over 450 square metres, which means you don't have the small lot rules. Small lot rules just really quickly limit you to 25 metres in length, 50% site cover, generally speaking, 1 metre side setback, 6 metre rear setback, all of that sort of stuff. So you don't need to worry about any of those rules. You don't have the character overlays. You generally don't have the heritage overlays, any of that sort of stuff. So you're more likely to be able to find the exemptions to get you out of all the triggers when it comes to those areas.
Yeah.
But the closer you go into the city or the more you go into, say, the bush areas like Mount Cootha, Toowong, that sort of stuff, you start to trigger those protected vegetation overlays. The minute you go into like Rockley and all those areas, you're always going to trigger flooding.
Right.
So there's definitely certain areas where particular issues pop up.
Actually, even just sitting here talking and thinking back, we actually had a DA on a 17-acre block out at Brookfield.
Yep.
Because
you get a lot of protected vegetation out there, environmental management. There's weird and wonderful rules like you need to be 15 metres vertical distance below the ridge line so that you're not sort of dominating the views from the city, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so, well, it's a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
I honestly, I thought town planning was mainly to do with flooding and like the character stuff.
But you even get quirks, like there's a sub-precinct, one of the oldest areas in Brisbane is the area, like there's a few streets in West End, so Granville, a few areas around that basically where, because they're such old, really humble, cutesy houses, council's got a whole level of protection there that basically says you can't raise those houses to make them two-storey structures.
Yeah, right.
Everyone buys them going, perfect renovation option here. I'm going to lift it up, enclose underneath, extend to the back. And they come on my doorstep and I go, you can't raise it up more than 4.8 metres off the ground and you can't do this and that. And there's so many quirks to the city, different areas. Like you go to Sherwood, Graceville, that sort of area, you can't do carports out the front of your house as of right because they want to basically make the old traditional houses dominate the streetscape. So ideally, council wants you to put those carports or garages behind the house. Everyone always lodges applications to come forward. You go Moggle Bellbarry, you can't do rear lot subdivisions out there in certain pockets because they want to keep that bush sort of feel.
Geez, look, I'm literally sitting here learning. Like, this is all news to me, so I'm sure a lot of our listeners, it's going to be news to them as well. And the more I listen to you, the more important I think it is that like you're actually one of the phone calls. Like if you're looking at purchasing a property or you're a builder that's got a set of drawings and you're not quite sure on things, and you've got to be like almost that first call.
It's just so quick and easy for me to look it up, council's records and all of that sort of stuff, run through Charlie, get the information back and go, okay, now this is what we're looking at. This is what you need to consider before you start designing. So when the designer or the builder or architect, whoever the professional is, gets in front of the client, they can from day one have those informed conversations with people. So I can give you an example. Like the other day I looked at a property and it was a perfect example of all these issues coming together. So it was a small block, less than 450 square metres. So they were subject to those limits in terms of side setbacks, all that stuff I mentioned. They were a pre-1911 house, so they couldn't remove that rear roof form to be able to extend backwards. They had flooding that literally ran under the front half of the house, which was mapped overland flow path. There was an easement over the top, which tells me it's serious flooding. So they had to be 2.5 metres off the ground. Then they had some trees out the front, so they couldn't get access to the garage from the main frontage. They had to come in the back. And then they had the transport noise overlay a couple of hundred metres away, which was basically going to force double glazing and all the extra construction requirements on them. So I sat there and went, okay, you don't have much room to go backwards, and if you do go backwards, you've got to protect the roof form, which means the really low sort of joins between the old and the new components. You can't build in underneath because of flooding. You've got to spend extra money on this noise stuff. Oh, they had bushfire too. So I went, okay,
Holy
because of the
billy.
bushfire, you've got to put all this extra stuff in there. Like I once had a job at the foothills of Mount Cootha, Toowong.
They've just added 500 grand to their build costs.
Well, literally, this job in Toowong recently, it was not recently, it was a couple of years ago now, added an extra $100,000 in construction costs because they had to put this life jacket paint that puffed up when it got exposed to heat on the posts. They had screens that came down the event of fire, all this extra stuff. When the person purchased that property, they didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow, there is so much to know with town planning. I should have bought my book and been writing stuff down.
I always joke I wouldn't have a job if it was straightforward. There's a lot of questions to ask. Yep.
A lot of jobs go through a standard process to get a BA.
Yep.
So obviously there's a standard sort of, I don't know what you call it, envelope or something, that if you stay within those guidelines building-wise, you might not need a DA.
Correct.
But
Option 1, avoid a town planning application.
Yep. Yeah. So if the house can go with option 1, how should that be picked up if the designer hasn't called a town planner, if the builder doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's that certification? Is that like your last sort of barricade? Is that where it should be picked up?
In an ideal world, what I would love to see is people asking questions before they purchase a property. I would love through our social media to just have that awareness built to a level where people go, I want to purchase a property, I want to renovate that house if I purchase the property, or if I'm purchasing, I'm going to build a shed at the back, whatever their intention is. I need to run it past a town planner to see whether I can do that in this property before I purchase it.
Yeah.
Then next best step is, okay, when you get to the building design professionals, the building designer or the architect, build their knowledge to a point where their automatic reaction is, okay, we've got to ask a town planner what we need to know about this before we start designing, so that we're not getting to that final gatekeeper process, because that is where the pathway we go at the moment, because just no one knows what town planning is. And as I said, it leads to so much more in terms of tears and all that emotion, because people are ready to start construction. Once you get to the certifier, you're ready to start. You're financially lined up.
Yeah, well, you've probably got your proposal, you've accepted a price,
you're locked in.
You've got your finance organised. So is that something that a certifier has to do? Yes,
so the certifier is required to check that all relevant approvals have been sought before they issue their final approval.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, there's a lot going on there. Like, no wonder I avoided it for so long.
And as I said, a lot of people go through life just happening to pick those easy sites where you don't have the small lot rules, the flooding, all that sort of stuff, the perfect sites where you just slip on through. But it's becoming harder and harder to find perfect sites. All the easy sites are gone. We joke about that all the time. Everyone's having to chop up the blocks that shouldn't have been chopped up in the past.
Yeah.
So it is going to start triggering more and more. And as society becomes more and more sensitive to what's going on around them, we're going to see more and more town planning rules, because every time a new planning scheme comes out, the rules intensify.
Yeah, and like we've got so many people.
Yeah, we're trying to squish more and more people into this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm keen to know a little bit more about Charlie.
Yeah.
You mentioned Charlie a few times, if you're willing to share. But because look, I looked at your.
I love it. You're like, is she a person?
Well, I looked at your website and then it said breaking the old rules with young chicks or something.
Something like that.
Youngish chicks or something, and getting rid of all the BS. And then it had like your photo and your
Bee's
admin
photo,
Bee's photo, and then Charlie was an animated person. I actually said to my wife Camille, Charlie mustn't want to get a photo taken. Now it turns out that Charlie is a program.
Yeah. So Charlie was born out of the, like I suggested before, frustration of trying to get people to ask questions up front. So I was constantly lecturing people to say, before you start that, in particular building designers, before you start designing anything, the minute you get that phone call to say, hey, we would like to chat to you about doing a renovation or whatever the thing is, I wanted them to send that email through to me and say, what do I need to know? And then I could quite easily come back and go, protected vegetation at the back, or can't raise the house over 2 stories, whatever the rules are. These are the key guidelines. Let me know if you have any questions type thing. And everyone just kept coming back to me going, oh, but we don't want to be a burden on you. We don't want to put pressure on you. And so I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, you don't know how easy it is. A 2-minute check of the property report, I come back with so much information for you guys. So I just got to the point where I just went, okay, how do I break that barrier down? How do I try and get people engaging with me? Well, if I create a computer program, it can't be a burden on me, can it? So I actually started working with a guy. It started with some small report generating sort of stuff, and eventually I went, well, hold on a sec. If computer programs can help me in writing reports, maybe they can help me with gathering the information, and maybe they can do this. And now so much of my business is automated, which is amazing.
That's unreal.
Yeah, but basically Charlie is a computer program that gathers all of our site information for us. So she runs around and basically gets all the information from all the different websites, hands it to me in a nice little PDF document document so I can scan it and quickly see what the issues are on a property. Because human nature also kicks in. You go, I'm time poor, or that'll be right. They won't have any noise issues or whatever. I know that area will be sweet. And you make errors. So number one, it's encouraging people to ask questions. Number two, it's a safeguard for me, making sure that I have all the information at my fingertips.
That is, like, I think anyone that embraces technology in their business is going to go a long way. Like, I think if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
My biggest thing here is it allows me to offer a higher level of customer service. There's things I couldn't do for people, or I couldn't offer them in terms of information, all that sort of stuff, if I didn't have Charlie supporting me.
Yeah. So has Charlie got all the door handle information and the gable information?
No, still training her in that. But now you've inspired me. I'll go home and do that.
So you mentioned a couple of times about noise overlays.
What are they?
Educate me, because it come up a long time ago. I think we got asked to price some townhouses over in Maruka, and the job never ended up going anywhere. But what are they?
Okay, let's try and keep this really, really simple. Basically, the state government and also Brisbane City Council have gone around the city and mapped out all the major roads. They've mapped out, okay, well, here's where the noise goes to based on current modelling. Let's be real, population's going to increase, number of cars are going to increase in the future. We need to expand that modelling to deal with that future increase down the track.
Yep.
They are, rightfully so, focused on covering their backsides and making sure they don't get complaints down the track, because they don't want to be building all these fences and everything around, putting this extra ratepayer money into infrastructure unnecessarily.
Yep.
So they're turning around going, okay, well, if you want to build a new house or if you want to extend your house, you're going to have to build it to modern standards to make sure you account for that future increase in terms of noise. So whenever you do a renovation or a new build or any of that sort of stuff, you trigger, if you're falling within these thresholds, you trigger the application of those noise requirements. The certifier is the one that enforces them, and it means double glazing, stuff like that. So extra construction cost is what it comes down to.
So that even gets triggered on a renovation. So in a renovation, would it be only the areas getting worked on?
My understanding is yes. So this is when the certifier sort of takes over and they handle it all. But my understanding is there is exemptions that cover existing components. It's only the new works.
Yeah, right. Would that come into play under like a flight path, or is it only roads?
Yeah, there'll be flight paths. We've got the airport noise environs overlay as well, and that's another one that triggers those extra noise requirements.
Yeah.
Especially if you get into there's different subcategories, and one of them's 25 and above, and that is just an alarm bell for me to go, oh, you're going to have to put some massive money into this house to make it comply.
Yeah.
And then you've got things like the industrial amenity overlay. So every time you've got some industrial blocks, or you've got a petrol station, or you've got something that's emitting an odour, again, you've got this big ring around it, however many 100 metres, and if you fall within that threshold, the onus is on you to make sure that you stack up with those rules so that you're not creating a complaint generator down the track.
Far out. I definitely needed my notepad today, because I think I've just filled a page up. I'm going to have to watch this back.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm sitting here going, damn it, I haven't given anything. I've got to come up with some good points.
No, look, you have given incredible values. We got flood overlay, we got character, we got noise, we got pollution, we've got
Well, what I look at it is, so you can trigger an application and hence issues through either the zones, the overlays, or the neighbourhood plans. In simple terms, there's a few other things to consider, like lot sizes. There's something like 27 or 28 different overlays that come into effect on a property at the moment. There's something like 70 or 80 neighbourhood plans. They're increasing all the time. There's just so many different combinations of rules that can result in different outcomes for each and every property. Like I said, you can glide through and miss all of those triggers happily and be oblivious to how town planning works. And then one day you'll hit a site that suddenly, like the one I described, has got 5 or 6 different issues on it. And you're going to know about it.
Yeah. Or you have a situation like us where the wall fell down and cost us a lot of money. But so this intrigues me even more. So one of my, obviously my passion and Amelia's passion with our Live Life Build is I believe there's not enough training out there for builders. And most builders aren't running a good business, definitely aren't running profitable businesses, aren't giving their clients the experience that they should have. How is there do town planners have CPD points, or do you have to do regular courses?
Town planning is such a new industry. So I think the first planning scheme in Brisbane came in the 1960s, might have been 1961 or something like that. It wasn't until the 1987 town plan that we really saw a step up in legislation and increase in the amount of rules and therefore triggers for town planning. But it wasn't probably until 2000s where council actually started, again, I'm talking Brisbane City Council, started issuing penalty fees if you didn't lodge what was called a properly made application. So if you didn't actually provide all of the required information, they penalised you.
Yeah.
So up until that point, a lot of building designers, builders, architects were just lodging applications themselves. They'd just throw the plans in, do a cover letter, and happy days. Then they started getting these fees all the time, and they went, oh, hold on a sec, something's got to change. I didn't start being a business owner. I didn't start down this career path to do applications or reports. I need to find someone. So that's where the town planning industry was born, pretty much at that point, through everyone going, we don't want to pay fees.
So is town planning always... So you're a private town planner?
Private town planner, correct.
Has it always been like that, or is it like certification? Did council used to do it?
Council's always the assessing body. You can always DIY. So as a mum and dad or whatever, you can go and lodge your own application. But I always say to people, we could always go to court and represent ourselves if you wanted. Do you necessarily want to? No, because you've got the fear of I might stuff it up, or what if I don't get it right, or I don't have the time to invest in trawling through legislation. Similar sort of thing here. Yes, anyone can do it. You don't necessarily need a degree or anything like that. But there is a lot of expertise and experience that comes through being a professional town planner.
Well, look, what have we been going for? Nearly an hour or something, and I've literally filled a notepad with stuff I didn't know. So I think you would be absolutely crazy to try and look into town planning yourself. But it's also intriguing me, like someone as young as yourself has the amount of knowledge, like the knowledge that you have. And to me, that just simply shows your passion.
I'm a very big why person. I'm always looking for the why. What drives that? What created that decision, that outcome? And I think that leads to a lot of my knowledge. I'm not happy just to be told the rule and accept it. I want to know what's behind it. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm constantly searching. I annoy a lot of people. But why? But why?
Well, look, you're giving value. Like you are, like if someone comes to you, like they're going to know that you've.
I'll talk their ear off.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. No. Look, it just shows your passion, and I think in our industry, like I think that like so many times in our industry, and I think it applies to you as well. Like everyone with professional fees, with the cost of building, everyone looks at the bottom line, and I'm such a big advocate for it's nothing to do with the price. Like the price means absolutely nothing unless you understand the scope of work that person is going to do for you for that fee. Definitely. And like just sitting here listening to you and what's involved, and not only that, like we touched on before, like if someone pays you $5 to $10,000 on a project that
it's $1 million spend or whatever it is.
In Brisbane, like let's face it, it's going to be minimum $700-800 million
these days. Yes.
Like that is money well spent. It just blows my mind. Well, look, I definitely you have given incredible value. You've given me a lot to go away and think about. We might even have to take a second round
once
of this.
You had a chance to process.
So because you've given so much value. The fact that you went out there and you tried all those extreme things, and you then threw yourself out there and started your own business, and 7 years later you're killing it.
Still doing it.
So I guess just to wrap it up, like what is your plans? Like as a town planner, a female town planner, what's your goal for your business? Like what are you all for town planning? Like what would you like to see happen?
I love challenging expectations, making people question why they do things, making people consider doing things different ways, all of that sort of stuff. I don't believe in just the status quo, doing it the way everyone else has done it before. So I want to continue to do exactly that, challenge the way people think about town planning. Yeah. In the process, make people's lives easier, smoother, all of those side benefits that you get. Yeah,
that is unreal. And look, if for everybody watching, homeowners, clients, builders, even tradies, like I think you need to go back and watch this one a few times because I know I'm going to watch it, and this time I'm going to take notes. Look, Peta, thanks very much for coming and having a chat. I definitely think you've given incredible value, and for anyone that's watching this that doesn't go and check with a town planner now before they buy a house or do a project has got to be
a few screws loose.
I was going to say the exact same thing. So thanks very much for coming, and thanks for we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Duayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.